Conor McGregor says Kamaru Usman is the perfect fight for Khamzat. Via Instagram comment, Conor said a much better fighter at 185, but he must face bigger opponents now, albeit not this fight as he faces a 170 on a steep skid, but he himself gets to weigh in the bigger weight. A perfect fight for the Chechen. I'm excited to see this story unfold. Max Holloway gives his take on the Alexander Volkanovski vs. Islam rematch tomorrow. On his YouTube channel, Max said, "I think Alex shows up from the 5th round, like the last one. It's going to be a tough fight. A lot of people are counting Alex out, which is ridiculous. I don't think Alex would put himself in a position to take a fight like this, especially with all the risk of him not being able to maybe get a 3rd shot at Islam. If it does go bad for a title shot and his 155 hopes is whatever. When you look in the record books years from now, nobody's going to be like, oh, he took this on 10 days notice, you know?" Colby Covington is betting on Islam tomorrow.
Greetings, nerds and virgins. America's Champ is back with America's Pick of the Week, brought to you by Colby Covington Incorporated and the undisputed king of the sportsbook, MyBookie.ag. We have UFC 294 coming to you live from Abu Dhabi, headlined by Islam Makhachev and that little Australian stand, Alex Volkanovski. Mongoloid Makhachev should have his way with Volk this afternoon, but it's time for him to move up to a real man's weight class, and America's Champ will be waiting for him.
Michael Bisping says Alexander Volkanovski is miles better than Islam on the feet, and Anthony Smith disagrees. Smith says although Islam isn't quite as creative on the feet, he still gave Volk a lot of problems in their first fight.
Volkanovski, it's not like I don't think Volkanovski can't do it, you know. And then also I'm reminded of when I just saw some footage of Islam hitting the pads and stuff this week. On the feet, he's nowhere near what Volkanovski has. He's not. I saw him hitting and kicking a punch bag, and just like he doesn't turn his hips over on the kicks and stuff like that because that's not his background. Volkanovski is by far better and slicker. His footwork is incredible. The way he switches stances, the way he understands range, the way he cuts angles after his combinations and all the rest of it. So yeah, listen,
I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I thought that Islam, he's not as dynamic and as creative as Volkanovski is on his feet. He doesn't have the same angles, but I thought Islam gave Volkanovski a lot of problems on his feet early.
He did
in that first fight, and I thought that's what made the fight so unique, was that Islam was a much tougher out in the grappling, or Volkanovski was a much tougher out in the grappling than I think Islam expected him to be. So I think both guys had the other guy do much better where they're the strongest than they probably expected. So I actually thought Islam looked really, really good in the striking and won a lot of those striking exchanges early because of his length and his size.
No, I thought he looked sharp, very accurate, very fast. I'm just saying technically the way he throws,
not as dynamic or diverse. For sure.
Yeah, but hey, I will take effective over being technically perfect any day of the week.
Belal Muhammad shares what his game plan would be if he were fighting Khamzat Chimaev this weekend.
If I'm Team Usman, we got to know what we have in front of us. A guy that's going to sprint at you right away. He's going to come out here and try to make a statement on you. He thinks he's been telling the world that he's the baddest man, the wolf, and he's going to eat you up. And what he does every single fight, sprint towards you. So if I'm Usman, I'll need to slow the fight down right away. If I could grab a hold of him, push him to the fence, I'm going to do that. Or get him my footwork on the outside, being smart. You can't let this guy bully you. You can't let him pick you up, slam you. You can't let him take you down or hold you down. And if you do get taken down, like in the Leon Edwards fight, you can't give up your back. Khamzat's a finisher when it hits the ground. You got to be very smart in all of those positions. If you do end up getting taken down, get your back to the cage, work your way up slowly. If you're on the feet, don't get into a firefight with Khamzat because he loves the firefight. Stick to the fundamentals, the jab, pace yourself. It is a 3-round fight. Khamzat looks at every fight like it's a 1-round fight.
Robert Whittaker gives his opinion on what Alexander Volkanovski needs to do differently against Islam this weekend to get the W.
In my opinion, I think he needs to let his hands go a little bit more. He had such success with it, and he looked so dominant when he was moving forward, throwing hands, throwing kicks. Obviously, that comes with the risk of Islam, trying to shoot those takedowns, trying to get under him, and being controlled. Because honestly, if Volk wasn't controlled on the mat that round where he was on his back, and Volk was throwing punches, but he was defending the choke the entire time. If he wasn't controlled that round, then I think Volk might have even won that fight. So it definitely has some risk trying to move forward, trying to be more aggressive with his hands. But In saying that, though, he looked so good when he was moving forward, when he was taking an aggressive stance on his shots, when he was doing his stance switch left hand and then throwing that body kick with his legs. I don't know, he looked really good moving forward. And honestly, Makhachev didn't. He didn't look good when he was moving back. I would like to see more of that from Volk, and maybe him taking this fight on short notice frees his mind up to do exactly that. Maybe because if we look at this fight, he has absolutely nothing to lose. I'm sure he got paid excellent cash to take this fight on short notice. He's got a puncher's chance by any means. He's always training, so I'm sure he's fit enough for the 5 rounds.
Yeah,
and he gave, and that's got to play on Islam's mind. 12 days notice. Volk stepping in. Volk gave him his hardest fight to date. Volk has nothing to lose. Islam to lose to a guy on 12 days notice, it's pretty bad. Yeah. So
prior to Kamaru Usman stepping in on short notice, there were reports this week that the UFC initially wanted Sean Strickland to replace Paulo Costa. Sean allegedly declined. Khamzat versus Jared Cannonier was then booked, but Cannonier allegedly got injured. Sean Strickland thinks that Khamzat Chimaev versus Kamaru Usman is a bullshit fight. On the Man Dance podcast on Sean's YouTube channel, he says it's another quote-unquote layup for Khamzat by the UFC, and says the reasoning is because Khamzat sells fights.
Here's the thing. Usman's not on the camp. Usman hasn't been bulking up to middleweight. Usman took this fight for a paycheck. I think it doesn't really count because you have Chimaev, who's been training his off, who's been bulking up for middleweight. And then you have Usman, who's been like, I'm going to take this and get a paycheck. To me, this is kind of a fight. They just needed to fill a seat, and I got Chimaev. 170 full camp, 5 rounds, Usman. 3 rounds, coming off the couch, I got Chimaev. And then again, this is more UFC. To me, this is bull. And I'm sure it's probably about $1 to 1.5 they offered Usman to get the off the couch, get a plane ticket, and then go to Abu Dhabi. So this is a shit fight, Chimaev, but this fight's bullshit. Yeah, again, this is like, Chimaev sells fights, you guys. At the end of the day, he sells fights. Like, Gilbert, that was a draw. You had a draw with a 55er. It's like, and you guys, I'm not saying Chimaev's not tough for a couple rounds, but this is another layup. Yeah, I don't know who's who off in the UFC, but man, they just keep laying up the guy.
And that's going to wrap it up for the news. Thanks for watching. For daily MMA news and content, subscribe to Full Mount MMA and click the bell icon to be notified when we post videos. Here are the 3 top comments from last video. These comments are in reference to the UFC blurring out Francis Ngannou's shirt on UFC Embedded. The first one says, "This is one of the few times I'll say Dana didn't disrespect anyone. He was as filtered as we've ever seen him. He thought about his words very carefully and didn't bury anyone." The second one says, "Dana was actually as impartial during the presser as I've ever seen. He even gave Costa some defense." And the final one's from Brandon. It says, "I am always amazed by Whittaker's levity and humility when discussing his wins and losses. Class act through and through." Those were the 3 top comments from last video. If you want to be featured in the next one, all you have to do is comment down below. And if you missed yesterday's news, click the video on screen right now to get caught up.